Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending the next iteration of our series. This will be Mitigation Action, which is bringing together, sparking innovation for the upcoming year, especially for the BRIC program. This presentation is built around the guiding principles of BRIC. And with that, I will introduce our first presenter, is Beau Green. Beau Green is a native Marylander and architect who for over 2 decades has advocated for strategies in our built environment to minimize our impact on climate change. He currently serves as chair of the American Institute of Architects Maryland Disaster Assistance Program and is a founding member of the Washington, D.C. Metro chapter of the North American Passive House Network. He is helping to educate the public and private sectors about how our focus needs to be broadened from the predominant push to energy renewables to also include a rapid transformation of building industry. So with that, Beau, you take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I was wondering if down at the airport this morning, they were looking for that manual about how to deal with cicadas and airplane engines. I don't know if you heard that the press corps couldn't leave with Biden because of cicada problems. So they have a de-icing machine, but apparently not a de-cicada machine. So preparing for disasters. I'll first talk about the Maryland Disaster Assistance Program. So AIA started this program years ago, and it's run state by state. The programs that have developed tend to be the ones in states like Texas, Louisiana, Florida, South Carolina that have been hit. And what we do is we have trained or licensed architects and engineers and also building inspectors that are able to take a one-day seminar to kind of align them to what it's like to go into a disaster area. That's from California OES. And essentially we come in to help the local building inspector might be overwhelmed and calls MEMA, they call us. We come in to help do triage on buildings because local building inspector might not be able to get to the buildings quickly enough. Local population starts to go back into their office or house, get hurt. So we go in and kind of do a green light, yellow light, red light, 10-minute triage assessment of buildings and then turn that back over to the local inspector. So we're working with Russ Strickland and MEMA right now to get an MOU for that. The other hat that I'm wearing is with the North American Passive House Network. Passive House is a building approach that's been around for about 30 years. It actually started from the insulation research that was done back in the 70s by the US government, and then oil prices went down and they decided insulation wasn't important anymore. What Passive House essentially does is it is a very high efficiency building standard. So it lowers the energy use of a building by as much as 90%. And the reason that's significant is if you look at the current focus of all of our sustainable programs, it's all about coming up with better ways to produce non-fossil fuel energy. Wind power, solar power, electric vehicles, etc. What Passive House does is starts at the other end of the problem. It says instead of let's coming up with ways to continue to produce power, let's find ways to reduce the amount of energy we use. So if you reduce your energy 90%, then the last 10%, of course, you're going to want to use non-fossil fuel energy sources, renewable resources. The way that applies to MEMA's work, your work, BRIC, etc., is that I guess I'll strain an analogy here. The Titanic is steaming along. It knows there's icebergs out there. Yet there was some contrary interest of the owners, the money behind all that, and they basically just steamed ahead knowing that there might be a disaster. Indeed there was. They weren't prepared. And we all know the result of that. So what Passive House essentially is acknowledging that we are steaming ahead. And all the building scientists I talk to say that we may actually be past a tipping point where we're able to stop climate change. We may be able to slow it down, but we're already past that point where it might be possible for us to change that. So when we talk about mitigation, we talk about, for instance, doing riprap or doing ways to slow down flooding when it occurs. What we're talking about in the building industry is trying to find out ways to slow down or stop the flooding before it even starts. So how that applies in Maryland, for instance, is we're working with the legislators to talk about changing building codes. What we need is a very rapid transformation of our building industry. We don't have time. But one way I know this is that the Navy in Norfolk is already spending a lot of taxpayer dollars, billions is what my understanding is, on raising the docks and the buildings there. They already know, or they've already chosen which side of the climate change they're going to be on. So how does a passive house work? It's pretty simple. It's just a very, very well insulated building. It's very airtight. It turns out that airtightness is as important, if not more important, than the amount of insulation that's in a building. And then it depends on mechanical ventilation. So the indoor air quality is quite good. It's an excellent level of indoor air quality. It also provides a really excellent way to shelter in place. So in my own home in Silver Spring, Maryland, I can actually turn off let's say it's 20 degrees outside, I can turn off my furnace. At the end of the day, my house will be 3 or 4 degrees warmer because we can collect the heat in the house and the mechanical ventilator recovers the heat before it sends it out the exhaust. So this can be applied to any building type. It could be high rises. An entire city block in New York is being built this way now. And it's not the end all, but it is the fastest A to B route that we know of in the building industry on how to reduce the amount of energy that we're using in our society, which is obviously the direct cause of all this climate change. So in the BRIC, I was trying to read how the BRIC program works. I'm reading from the MEMA bulletin. It says the program's guiding principles are supporting communities through capability and capacity building, encouraging and enabling innovation, and promoting partnerships. So certainly this is innovation. Partnerships would be between the public and private sector, in that, for instance, the design community, engineers, architects, know about this. We need to get probably tax rebates and ways like with the solar programs where there was tax rebates to put solar on your roof. It worked very well. So we're going to talk to the legislators about that. We also have an opportunity for jobs because we are going to need builders to understand how to do this. This is not something we can just design and have any contractor go out and build because, for instance, of the air tightness. It really requires somebody to have that understanding and be on board. It's not complicated. It's just a little bit of a different paradigm. And Jaleesa asked me in a memo, what's the best piece of advice for state agencies and local communities? I think it's about education. I think it's about acknowledging first that we are steaming towards a field, not just one, but maybe many icebergs, and let's not do what they did in Titanic. Let's not wait until it's too late. So education about what passive house is, what the building industry can do to change the future direction we're moving in, and not be afraid to take some bold actions because, you know, they tried to take a bold action with Titanic. They couldn't turn it fast enough, however. So right now, Jaleesa, I think if you could provide a link, there is the Passive House annual conference is tomorrow and Friday in New York. We've provided a code that anybody that's in government or policy can access the 2-day seminar for free. So Jaleesa, if you can pass that along, you just put in the code. You have to go to register, you then put in the code and the sessions, then you can access any of the ones you want and come to a better understanding. Jaleesa, if you'll also provide my contact information, I would be more than willing to talk to people about how this works. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. This is Joseph Daniels. I am president and CEO of the Jose Group LLC,
Mhm.
and I'm very much interested in emergency management strategies.
Mhm.
Where do you see, is this something that could be a part of a post-disaster rebuild strategy in certain areas and develop the trade skills in order to build that within the community to have resiliency within that community?
Well, yes. The answer essentially is yes. You've heard of Build Back Better. The Biden program uses that phrase. So this building method applies to new and to renovation projects. It can be, for instance, I've renovated my 1968 plain vanilla house in Silver Spring to those standards. And there is something in the Maryland legislature that's very interesting right now with trades. They are trying to get some money to get a couple of trade high schools. Then they would buy a house and then they would renovate it to passive house standards and teach the high schoolers how to do that. I love that idea because what better place to start but with young folks. I think that there could certainly be a jobs program that would develop around this that would be perhaps state sponsored that would help to start to train the building industry in this. Indeed, we do have seminars already that tradespeople can take, and at the end of that, they know how to do passive house. And that's online and that's available. You can certainly find it through that link that Julissa will send, where you can go to North American Passive House Network, naphn.org, and it has tradesperson seminars already.
Follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that skill sets could be that using augmented reality that you could possibly accelerate the utilization of that technology in order to build faster? That is, to be able to use ways in which you can get students more interested from a STEM standpoint, and as well as a newer transformational technology standpoint, and capture their interest in order to build back better faster.
Well, I guess the answer again is yes. This building technology is based on computer modeling, intensive computer. Now, I'm trained as a passive house consultant, but I hire somebody to do my computer modeling because I could do it, but it requires so much time. It's like I'm an architect. When I go to do structure, I hire a structural engineer. So the energy modeling is quite intense, and that's why we're able to do this. The benefit of this building technology is that it's completely objective. You know, before you build the building, that you will be able to reach a certain parameter that they hold out as being passive house compliant. And so the energy model starts, then you have to build it. And then the real cherry on the sundae is there's a pass-fail test. They call it a blower door test. So they take and pressurize the building. Remember, I mentioned that air tightness is key. And they basically go around and they look for leaks. If that blower door, that will spit out a number. And you either hit that number or you don't. And so if you don't, you have to go back and find those air leaks and reseal them. And that's why we need to have contractors that understand how to do that. This is barreling along like a freight train. There's already about 200,000 buildings in Europe that have done this. Brussels, for instance, their building code is passive house. The EU right now, I'm working on a commission with them where the EU wants to bring their experience of Brussels to the United States. And so we're talking to Montgomery County, for instance, about having Brussels work directly with them to bring that into play.
It'd be great if that could be done in Baltimore City and other parts of the state as well. I mean, to have a larger footprint in order to be able to green the footprint in Maryland to make it more climate neutral.
Yes.
And ways in which it could reduce its carbon footprint as well. You know, that with the combination of solar energy sort of puts it in fact, the passive energy generation scenario, because you're sort of reducing your carbon footprint, but also relying on more so solar energy in order to provide you the power you need in order to support the infrastructure you want.
That's right. That's right. And so, really, actually, an article that just came out yesterday that said net positive or net zero is not really our objective. It's carbon. It's all about carbon. So you can have a net zero building that still is not very good at sequestering carbon, for instance. So that's become a big deal. Just to bring it back around, though, is like I remember talking to Lisa, we were kind of laughing about the term nuisance flooding. Nuisance flooding, when your parking lot floods occasionally. In Mother Nature parlance, that's called the beginnings of big floods that are not a nuisance, but they're catastrophic. When the parking lot starts to fill every once in a while, it's the first signs that water is rising and you have a problem. So that's we're tending to look at the little things, and I'm encouraging this among you all. We need to look big, because I guess I say, what would happen 100 years from now? Would humans look back at us and just go, what was wrong with them? Couldn't they see the signs? Like, it was so obvious. Why didn't they react sooner? And my own belief is that that's where we are. And something like Passive House is instrumental and can have a profound effect as we go forward. So yeah, we can build the riprap walls, but like I know in New York City, they're looking at building a wall to hold out the flooding there. But what they're worried about is that it will go over the wall. How do you spell New Orleans? So, and by
Puerto
the way,
Rico.
That's a nice Jimi Hendrix poster behind you, Joseph.
Oh, it's not Jimi Hendrix.
It's not Jimmy. Who is that?
No, it's Miles Davis.
Oh, well.
It's Miles Davis.
Yes,
right. He's my hero, right? My hero is Miles Davis for this reason, because I want to be the technology as he was the jazz. His whole thing, right, was all about jazz fusion. My whole thing now is all about data fusion. I want to see it get really integrated, because I really do think we could take it and make a difference in lives of individuals if we're able to capture it and utilize it the way it needs to be done. I think what you've talked about is great. And I'd love to follow up with you to see what can be done to create multiple building sites in Maryland for what I'm going to look at, which is called community resilient hubs in multiple parts of Maryland.
Well, Josie, you bring up a great point. This is not technology for the rich and famous. This is generally being best applied to fixed and low income housing. Governments are subsidizing that already because, for instance, if you're on a fixed income and you're paying your utility bill and you're paying $90 a month, let's say $100 a month, next month you're paying $10 a month. That can make a really big difference to somebody on a fixed income or low income. I also read about a project. It was a YMCA, and they had a lot of homeless folks coming in, or it's actually a homeless shelter. And they found that the bug infestation got lowered quite a bit because they did air sealing between the rooms. So the bugs, if somebody came in and had bugs on them, it wasn't going to room. So there's a lot of offshoots. In my case, I live next to the Washington Beltway, and my wife does not care about the thermal capabilities of my triple glazed windows, but she really likes that they're very quiet. So living in a passive house is spectacular. It's like once you've gone there, you're not going back. And I re-emphasize the maintenance is lower. The cost is not higher. We automatically would think it was higher. So lastly, Joseph, I'll say there is a program right now where there's an attempt to buy a number of row houses in downtown Baltimore, build them to passive house, do some real-time testing with the University of Maryland Engineering Department. And we need to get some example projects built in Maryland. That's it's the show me, tell me. We need to have some showcase. I've talked to Russ Strickland about, for instance, if you want to build a new shelter, let's say it's a gymnasium, it's been designated as the emergency shelter in a small town. Let's build it to Passive House standards. Then if the power goes out, all those people are going to be comfortable in the summer or winter because of the shelter in place capabilities.
Thank you for your insight.
You're welcome. Good questions.
All right, I'm going to cut it right there for that. There'll be time for more questions after everyone's presentation, and then again at the very end. So open it back up to the panelists. But for now, we will move forward. So thank you, Bo, and thank you, Joseph, for the wonderful questions and dialogue. Moving forward, our next presenter will be Nicole Mascheroni. Nicole works for Michael Baker International as a project manager. She creates products and events that show value of flood reduction and risk assessment efforts and builds partner capacity by best practice sharing and training. As chair of the Maryland Association of Floodplain and Stormwater Managers, she has helped create partnerships with like mission organizations. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen. And Nicole, it is on you.
All right, I will share mine. And thank you for that introduction. Let me know when you see my screen.
Yep, looks good.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, MEMA, for inviting me to speak. I was told that this session is to spark creativity and partnerships as you all are considering BRIC and FMA projects. So I'm hopeful that this will do that. I am wearing two hats today. One as chair of the Maryland Association of Floodplain and Stormwater Managers, another as a project manager for Michael Baker International. So I'm going to go through a lot of the activities that MAFSM does. I hope some of them are of interest to you, and if you think you want to replicate any of them or build from any of them or join in with any of them, please feel free to contact me. And then I'll share a couple of projects that we're doing locally in Maryland through Michael Baker International. And if you have any interest in any of those, I can connect you with the project manager of those as well. So MAFSM is a nonprofit, professional, all-volunteer organization. We were organized in 2004 by a group of private and public partners. And we have a bunch of purposes as part of our mission. We want to create spaces for the exchange of information, ideas, and experiences. We like to disseminate information around floodplain and stormwater management. We like to provide education and training opportunities. We promote public awareness of flood safety, flood reduction, flood mitigation. We like to promote the professional status of floodplain and stormwater managers. And we spend a lot of time partnership building. And partnership building, I think, is the key to our success. As an all-volunteer organization, we really rely on the generosity of our members and their employers, who allow them to spend their own time or get approval to spend their time working to support our efforts. Our organization is really about making connections, building partnerships, providing outlets for partners to share their messages, to gather support for their initiatives, and often these lead to mitigation efforts and projects. We have a very strong, dedicated group of individuals and also partner organizations, and they found value in supporting our organization over the years. So we've steadily just added to the types of activities that we do, and we really have found a lot of success in our volunteer cadre. Some of our partnerships include membership in the Maryland Resiliency Partnership. We participated with the Howard County Watershed Improvement Network. We help support Annapolis's Weather It Together team. We're a longstanding partner with the national organization, the Association of State Floodplain Managers, and we're plugged into a lot of the local county government's floodplain management offices because their floodplain managers are members of our organization. We also plug in with a lot of state agencies that ask us to help spread information or provide trainings or provide support in some of their initiatives. So When I talked to Jaleesa about, what can I share about MAFSM, she suggested we share just a couple of tips on how we get some of our projects off the ground. A lot of times it seems like it's going to be a lot of work, or there's a lot of unknown when you're trying to do something new, when you're looking for a new project or a new effort. So I'm going to talk specifically about the specific things that we do, but just in general, I think some of the ways that we have found success are by just doing a couple of things. In general, we give when we can. If people ask us to help, we usually start from a place of yes. And if we can't always support fully in the way that we're asked, we find some way that we can provide support if it aligns with our purpose and our mission. In the past, we've done things like we funded buses for field tours when people wanted to organize tours for things like touring green infrastructure. We funded those buses. We provided food and refreshments for long workshops because that just makes it easier. Back when we were all doing our workshops in person. We provided financial donations to support college scholarships and to support other activities that align with our mission. So we've been around for about 17 years, and how do we keep going with no paid staff? Like I said, we are an all-volunteer organization. So I think the key to how we've, continued to be successful with no paid staff is we have a very passionate group of people who work in floodplain and stormwater management, not only just as a paycheck or for a job, but because they truly believe it's important, so they're willing to volunteer their time to help further those efforts. As an organization, we acknowledge and we thank our volunteers regularly and as often as we can, and we're just very grateful for as much as they can give. And if they can sit on the board and be a standing board member, we are grateful for that. But if they can't do that, are still willing to maybe write a newsletter article or even share a social media post, we still acknowledge and thank them for that, because any amount of support helps further our mission. When we're looking for volunteers, a lot of times people want to help and they want to be polite, so they'll say yes. But we found a great way to turn those yeses into action is to make our requests very specific and to start small. So we might make a specific request for someone to write a newsletter article. And then if they do that, then maybe it's time to ask them to do something a little more, like maybe moderate a session at our conference. And just slowly be willing to be patient with our volunteers as they grow how much they want to participate. We found a lot of success in that. So partnership building, something I think our organization is pretty good at. So I want to talk now about some specific things that we do throughout the year. We like to create spaces for the exchange of information, ideas, and experiences. So in 2016, we started these lunch and learns. They're a venue for best practice sharing. And 5 years ago, webinars were less common than they are now. Now in our post-COVID world, attending a webinar for an hour over your computer is no big deal. But 5 years ago, it was something that sort of stretched people's comfort level, but we thought it was worth doing. So people could dial in during their lunch hour. They could learn about industry relevant topics without needing to travel or have a registration fee or get approval to leave their office. These were largely successful, but we found that COVID times have really stretched everyone's technology comfort level, and we've seen attendance in these increase dramatically. So for our lunch and learns, there's no cost to attend. Members and non-members are welcome. Where possible, we offer continuing education credits to help people maintain their certifications. And past topics have included things like MEMA gave one recently discussing Maryland's repetitive loss strategy as part of their hazard mitigation plan update. We've had lunch and learns about the Coast Smart Council's Climate Ready Action Boundary. The City of Baltimore has presented on how comprehensive planning has created an exceptional disaster preparedness plan for them. The Chesapeake Bay Trust has presented on their grant program. We've had Maryland Historical Trust talk about protecting historic buildings from flooding. And several others, as you can see here on the slide. So more to come on Lunch and Learns. And if you're interested in being invited to our Lunch and Learns, just go ahead and pop your email in the chat, and I will collect that from Nevin after the call and be sure to put you out on our list. So another way that we create spaces for the exchange of information is by hosting an annual conference. We've been doing this for about 16 years. It's always in the fall. It's always in Central Maryland. It's typically at a large venue when we can have events in person, which we hope to do this fall. Our attendance has steadily grown to over 200 people. And a couple of things that I think are noteworthy about our conference is we have an abstract submittal process where everyone is invited to submit abstracts, and we vet our speakers. And in that way, we obtain a really wide variety of topics from professional peers, ranging from floodplain and stormwater management issues to mitigation projects to outreach and communication projects and climate change concerns. So we generally have over 30 speakers going on 3 different tracks. Affordability has always been at the forefront of our planning. We try to keep our costs low. Even so, some local governments cannot afford to fund their floodplain managers or other staff to attend. So we provide a scholarship for those people to waive the registration fee. Funding for these scholarships is often provided by the Chesapeake Bay Trust or from our own treasury. We also have an exhibitor hall, which is great for matchmaking service providers to projects. And we've been really fortunate over the years to have insightful keynote speakers to kick off our conference. Finding a keynote speaker can be a challenge every year. You're trying to reach out and always do one better than the year before and always, hit the right tone and the right topic. It's really pushed us to reach out to our partners network and identify people to fill this role. And I think we've really gotten some great keynotes over the years. Thought leaders in academia and government. We've even reached beyond our state and brought in people from other parts of the country so they could share their perspective. With most of our events, this conference is the same. We offer professional continuing education credits. And pulling this event together is no small effort. We rely on the volunteer efforts of our full board and committee members to execute many of the components of the conference. And we also contract out some of our support to a conference planning contractor. So it's sort of all hands on deck when we're trying to put on our conference. If you haven't attended in the past, I would encourage you to consider attending this fall. Again, if you are part of local government or county government, you can apply for a scholarship to attend. And we're also hosting a spring event. When the spring event is in person, which it's not this year, we alternate between Eastern and Western Maryland. Central Maryland isn't convenient for everybody, so we try to toggle our locations to increase attendance in that part of the state. When we're in Eastern Maryland, we focus on topics most relevant to that geography, and same for the West. And speaking of Western Maryland, that's where our event is focusing this year. We are virtual, so it won't literally be in Western Maryland, but it will be focused on Western Maryland relevant topics. So on the slide there's some information about who we're going to have speaking at the event and logistics. This event is $30. We have a great lineup of speakers. It's virtual. You can find more information about it on our website at www.mafsm.org. Again, if you belong to local government and cannot afford to attend, please reach out. We try to make accommodations wherever we can. So another part of our purpose is the dissemination of information. We really like to get the right information in the hands of the people who need it. So for our professional practitioners, we have a newsletter that we put out once a year. Articles are submitted by different peers. The newsletter articles are usually sort of like status update on what the association has done over the year, and also includes information that professional practitioners would be interested in. We also have a very active social media presence. We are part of LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and most recently Instagram. We like to promote partner activities, member successes, and topics of interest. Most recently on the social media side of the house, we participated in Maryland's inaugural Flood Awareness Month and helped support their social media campaign. There was a governor's proclamation. There were all kinds of videos and flood awareness posts with the hope to help Marylanders understand, reduce, and ensure their flood risk. Another way we disseminate information is through letters of support from our board. We'll provide letters of support for local actions that align with our mission. For example, when counties are trying to get support for funding for mitigation projects, if those projects align with our mission, in the past we have created letters of support for them to submit with their applications. We also write to our local legislators when there are bills that are on their dockets, letting them know where we stand on those, and always relaying that we support sound floodplain and stormwater management legislation and practices. Another way we disseminate information is through a product that we've recently created. It's going to be up on our website soon. We're just getting the final touches on it. But we do a lot of youth outreach, and this is a youth activity book. We were very, very fortunate to have a member whose son was going to school to be a designer. He's a very talented artist, and he volunteered his time to make an activity booklet for us to help teach youth about watersheds, flood safety, flood prevention, water quality, and green infrastructure. So special thanks to Osama Omoregbe. He's son of longtime MAFSM member Lawrence Omoregbe of the DC Department of Energy and Environment. So we plan to disseminate this activity booklet whenever we go out to fairs and classrooms and so on, and reach out to youth. Another part of our mission is education and training and promoting the professional status of stormwater and floodplain managers. Over the years, we've offered over 15 National Flood Insurance Program basics trainings. We've sort of done some rough math. We think we have educated over 375 people on the basics of the National Flood Insurance Program. We've proctored over 15 certified floodplain manager exams and given over 375 people the opportunity to take that test to get the certification. And as I mentioned before, we try to provide continuing education credits to as many different certifications as we can that align with the work that we do. So we are a CM provider through the American Planning Association. We have a longstanding relationship with the Association of State Floodplain Managers, so are able to offer CECs to maintain the Certified Floodplain Manager certification. We also have professional engineers on our board that can help members navigate the self-reporting of the PDH requirements in Virginia and Maryland. So more for education and training. We've done over 40 demonstrations over the last 10 years and exposed hundreds and hundreds of youth and citizens to the concept of watersheds. We do this by using this Ward's 3D floodplain model. As you can see in the picture, it's a plexiglass model that simulates a watershed, and you can do demonstrations where you put different trays to show different rain events and can manipulate the model in different ways to show the natural and built environment, and then show how the natural and built environment reacts once you simulate different rain events. We've used this for demonstrations in classrooms and county fairs, community workshops, scouting events, festivals, and trainings, and it's a really, really, really great way to show people how watersheds work. It's a hallmark of our organization's activities. It's seen a lot of miles. This model has seen a lot of miles over the last 10 years. And we do loan it out to people who want to use it for their other events. If anyone is considering, starting some youth engagement or having something like this, it's about $1,800. It's well worth the investment. You can get it from Ward's. They have a science kit or a science catalog. You can go online and order it. We have found it's well worth our investment because it really provides an opportunity for a hands-on experience for the audience, and it just leads to so much more inquisitiveness and questions, and really helps frame the story of like mitigation and why and what you do next once they understand how the watershed works. We're actually looking at maybe getting another one in the very near future because our 10-year-old one is getting a little tired. So those are most of our activities within the Maryland Association of Floodplain and Stormwater Managers. I hope some of that information has been of interest. I hope you find some value in the different things that we do. And if you want more details on any of those types of things, if you want to do them too, I'm happy to provide more details. My contact information is on the slide, and our website is on the slide, as is all of our social media handles. And then I'm going to take off my MAFSM hat and put on my Michael Baker International hat and just talk through some of the local mitigation projects that we're doing in Maryland. So as Bo mentioned in his presentation, nuisance flooding. Yeah, it is kind of an interesting concept that we call it nuisance flooding. So we do have nuisance flood plans that we've created for Charles County and Baltimore City. These nuisance flood plans address areas that flood on a continual frequency and increased severity. The flood risks are then assessed, prioritized, and mitigation actions are recommended over a 5-year planning period. We're also working on a Cambridge shoreline resiliency plan. The plan is going to help identify projects to mitigate flood risks along the Choptank River and Cambridge Creek. And the planning process, or I'm sorry, projects that evolve from the planning process will be constructible, permitted, and meet specific cost benefit requirements. We helped Talbot County update their green infrastructure plan through their program called a Cleaner, Greener Talbot, a plan for future livability. Key items addressed in the plan included climate change adaptation, resiliency initiatives, and stormwater management issues. And we've also helped develop HMA applications in Montgomery County, Washington, D.C., and Virginia Beach. This involved coordination and development of applications that included drainage improvement projects, an electrical utility undergrounding project, installation of a tide gate, and more. And finally, we're doing a climate vulnerability assessment for the Columbia Association. They manage over 3,600 acres of open space in Columbia, Maryland, which is part of Howard County. That includes pathways, playgrounds, footbridges, lakes, ponds, community buildings, outdoor pools, fitness clubs, and more. And we're developing a climate vulnerability assessment that'll help identify potential climate change impacts, analyze the impacts, and prioritizes vulnerabilities and provides guidance on preliminary mitigation measures. So if you have any questions about any of these or would like any more information, please feel free to reach out to me. I feel like I went a little bit over. I don't know if we'll have time for questions, but thank you so much for the opportunity to share this information.
Yeah, if there are any questions, we can take, 2 or 3 minutes if anybody has anything to go ahead and address some of those. I'll give it a minute.
Well, I know I'm going to get an introduction in a second, but I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to thank you, Nicole. I've been on many of those webinars and events, and we've been actually honored to present at some of them on some of our team members, and they're just terrific. So it's impressive what you're able to accomplish with that, just volunteers. I didn't realize that. So
oh, thank wonderful. You. Thank you. Yeah, passionate group.
Yeah, thank you guys. That's great.
I did see one thing in the chat. Someone asked, how do you get a copy of the booklet, the coloring book?
So we're going to get copies made. The artist is just putting some final finishing touches on it, and then we're going to get a bunch of copies made. So if you just want to reach out to me, we're starting a list of how to then disseminate the book. We're going to have a digital version on our website, so you can just download and print your own. But if you really want some of your own hard copy copies, we're going to print out a bunch of them and send them to people who want them.
Okay, and I'll post your email address in the comments section there for anybody who would like that. And with that, we will switch over to the next one. So let me present. Okay, so the next presentation will be by Kelly Leo. She directs the Resilient Coast program of the Maryland and DC chapter of the Nature Conservancy, working to build resilience to sea level rise for Maryland's coastal habitats and communities using nature-based adaptation approaches. Kelly has a bachelor's in human ecology from Middlebury College in Vermont and a master's of integrated water management from the University of Queensland in Australia, and has spent the majority of her career working on coastal climate adaptation for the Nature Conservancy in New York, California, and now Maryland. And with that, I'll stop presenting. And
Thanks.
Kelly, pass it over to you.
Thanks, Nevin. And I'm going to actually rely on you. I've been getting connectivity challenges or alerts that, so just let me know and I can turn my my video off. You guys have seen my face now, so that'll be the voice if that happens. And I I have a video to show in the second half of this short presentation. And I'll turn my video off then too, just so that we don't have any bandwidth issues. But what I'm going to share with everybody, just get this here. There we go. Can you guys see the screen now?
Yes, looks great.
Terrific. Okay, I can't see everybody now, but so I'm glad I don't have to convince anybody on the line that change is here. You know, in the work that I've done with the Nature Conservancy, I'm going to just introduce TNC and our work, and then speak to some work that we're doing with a community on the outskirts of Baltimore that we're just kind of getting started with, experimenting with different ways to raise awareness about sea level rise risks, and work with this. Hopefully, get to the implementation part of working with this particular community to implement some nature-based flood risk reduction and adaptation, immediate and longer term adaptation solutions for sea level rise and climate change. But you know, this is the space that I live and work in. I'm based out on the Eastern Shore. Most of the work we do is actually on the Lower Eastern Shore. So change really is here. Everybody on the phone, thankfully, it seems like we're all in the same mindset here, where we know that we understand the real challenges that are facing our communities here in Maryland, which has one of the highest localized rates of sea level rise in the contiguous US. But interestingly, without the sort of major influx of natural disaster related funding, maybe comparatively, possibly also fortunately, as other places in the US. But we're always thinking about how to make these projects are expensive. We're always thinking about how to make adaptation happen at scale. And the challenge is really real for us here. And change is here. Change at the coastline is normal. It's a normal part of what we do, but the thing that's different to us is the pace of change, and that's what our program's really working to help communities and our natural habitats adapt to. So when I say change is here, I also think so are we, and I mean that in a couple different ways. You know, 40% of the U.S. populations lives in coastal areas. They're much denser than inland areas, densely populated. But I also sort of silly here, but so is the Nature Conservancy. We've been thinking about coastal adaptation for habitats and communities for as long as I've been a part of TNC, really, and I've been with the organization for 14 years over a period of 20 years. So we've been thinking about this for a while, and I've been working with communities in all the different places, chapters that I've worked with. For those that don't know, the Nature Conservancy is the largest conservation organization in the world. We work in all 50 states and 79 countries and territories, and we have over 4,000 staff, 400 of which are staff scientists, so we're grounded in science. And our mission is to conserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. And the thing that I think really makes us unique is that we're science-driven. We're a huge organization for a nonprofit. We're science-driven, nonpartisan, solutions-oriented. But really the thing that speaks the most to me is our global to local reach. And so we're always thinking, because we're a huge organization, we're always thinking at these big scales. And yet the majority of what we do on the ground, you know, we tackle these really complex problems like climate change adaptation and sea level rise, and we think about how to make a difference at the global scale. But we work really locally, and most of our chapters have been, you know, rooted in community partnerships and working on the ground. As we started as a land trust, so we actually own a lot of land across the world, and we work closely with our community partners and have partnerships that date back, you know, over, you know, 50 plus years at this point in a lot of the places that we work. So we really heavily rely on our local partnerships to achieve lofty goals, and I think that fits really nicely in some of the BRIC. The sort of purposes behind the new BRIC program is those really, really nice partnerships. And so it's something we really believe in terms of how TNC operates. So our program here in Maryland, we're really, like I said a little bit before, we're working to empower coastal communities and habitats and sort of change the dynamics and jumpstart our ability to adapt to this increasing pace of change at the coastline. And you know, we thankfully know that all over the world, natural infrastructure and coastal habitats protect communities and livelihoods. They reduce risk from storm and floods. After Hurricane Sandy, our North America program came in and looked at how coastal wetlands, just by being in place, avoided property damage during Sandy. So they did this sort of retroactively, and they looked to explore where where our coastal habitats were offering protection, and they quantified that in Maryland specifically, that we were able to avoid over $4.5 million in damages just with the existing coastal wetlands that we have in place. So our chapter then decided to investigate really how much protection our coastal habitats offer to local communities. And this is really the driver behind that, is to be able to help quantify the local ability of our local habitats to help reduce risk to our communities that are there, and to give that information to local decision makers so that you're able to stand a little bit more solidly behind nature-based adaptation approaches and really understand how they will offer protection for the communities that need to rely on that protection. So what we found in a pilot study in 2018, looking at one place in Deal Island on the lower eastern shore of Maryland, was that over that first few feet of marsh, the coastal habitats were able to reduce wave height by up to 90%. And we're working to expand that and help drive use the science to drive how we make decisions about where we're protecting and investing in different nature-based adaptation approaches and coastal habitat restoration and protection going into the future. So and thinking a lot about damages avoided and how we can beef up our natural defense systems to help us reduce the impacts, the devastating impacts, but also the financial impacts. So I'm going to pivot now, and I have just a couple more slides, and I'll switch to a quick video because I want to let the community members speak for themselves. We've been working with Turner Station on the outskirts of Baltimore. So we work in rural areas, but also in urban areas to experiment with some of this virtual reality technology in terms of sparking conversations about how to the risks associated with sea level rise, and hopefully longer term conversations about how communities want to adapt, and hopefully how nature can be a part of that solution, nature-based approaches. And so when Joseph mentioned the augmented reality, we're experimenting with virtual reality technology with a company called Virtual Planet that helped us design this virtual sea level rise experience for this community. And the science behind that is showing that people who have a virtual reality experience related to climate change risks, particularly sea level rise, that people are more likely to then go take action and be motivated to go and get flood insurance and do different things like that. And so we're experimenting with this technology. And this is just I'm going to show you a snippet of a beginning of a project that we started working. There was an ongoing partnership at Fleming Park on the outskirts of this community, and you can see that on the bottom of the screen there, the baseball fields and that sort of peninsula is mostly the park, and the outermost building, this sort of on the lower part of the screen, is the senior center at the park. There's an ongoing beneficial reuse to revitalize a project to use dredge material from the port of Baltimore to revitalize this park and do some work there to really bring it back to life. And we were brought in to show the community the risks of sea level rise. And in creating this virtual reality experience for the community, we really started to see that there are impacts beyond the park. So we're actually shifting our focus. I'm going to show you the first version of this, but we're going to be redoing this with the community to look more at the risks to the actual homes themselves and the rest of the community assets there, and are looking forward to a longer term partnership and ultimately to getting some projects on the ground. So basically the point is that it brings the projected extensive sea level rise on the park and the neighboring community to life. And you can see on the bottom of the screen there with 6 feet of sea level rise, what happens to the park and the buildings around there, or what's projected to happen. And we've rolled this out only in a small way at a community information fair back in October 2019. And it was all over NPR. We had an NPR reporter who was really interested in the technology come cover it. So we got a lot of attention at the time, but really are looking to expand and move into the solutions part of the conversation with the community, and do this in a little bit more stepwise fashion. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I'm going to share a quick video. And I will, just so you can get a flavor for what, I'm going to actually stop my video as well, but you'll get a flavor of what the virtual reality experience is like. And I know we're running out of time here, so I'll only show a minute of it really quickly. And I'll share the link so that you guys can all watch it. And let's see. Can you guys hear it? There's nothing happening yet, actually.
Turner Station has been home
We
to
can
an
hear it,
amazing array of achievements.
Hooray.
military heroes,
I'll talk
Jesuits,
over it a little, but this is
athletes,
narrated by
educators,
Larry
a
Bannerman, who's a
congressman,
community
an
member in Turner
astronaut,
Station,
and many more notables.
and sits on their conservation team and this is sitting inside that senior center that I pointed out. This is their lunchroom in there and conference room. And so we're looking out at the park out that window to the left, but this is the virtual reality experience here. It gives you a flavor for what that is like. And we really wanted it to be integrated into what it actually looks like in the community. So we had this specifically designed to match what that room looks like. And then I'll just this is a tutorial basically that shows you
Welcome
how to
Fleming
actually
Park,
achieve
a waterfront
how to
park
walk
with
through
a
the
rich history
VR
connecting
experience.
the vibrant, historic Turner Station community to the water.
I'm just going to cut ahead here so you can see how it actually works and see the changes to the park. He's showing you all the different views.
Posed by sea level rise is an important step in bringing our community together to identify adaptation approaches that reflect our values and priorities for the future.
And then the last part, if anybody's afraid of heights, close your eyes. But the last part is in a blimp overlooking the park, and it really gives you that sort of, feels so realistic in terms of the rendering, but it's giving you a 3D look here, a 360 view of the park, and there's Francis Key Bridge over there. But you can see the projected rise on the park. I think it's just been really interesting and kind of, it's daunting. So that in our next iteration of this, I'm going to stop sharing now. In our next iteration of this, we're really going to be working with the community to visualize some of those adaptation solutions and use the tool as a virtual charrette to show how, to give people opportunities, show how the different adaptation solutions might reduce the flood risk now and into the future, and let people pick the best solutions for the community from that. So that's our aim for the coming years, collaborating with Turner Station and with this virtual reality technology. So I'll stop there with a minute to spare.
Thank you, Kelly. With that, if there are any questions for anyone, for any of the presenters at all, Bo had to drop out for a new meeting, but I will open it up. And if anybody has to go for the same reason, it's completely understandable.
And Nevin, I can send you the link to that if I'm not gonna be able to post in the chat because I just foolishly closed it, but I'll send you the link if you can share it with everyone after the fact. That'd be great.
Sure. So there's a question in the chat. I don't know, I'm trying to read through it because it's very long. Coastal erosion and sea level rise will put most of the coastal communities in jeopardy. There are legal and financial barriers to implement the climate change adaptations and mitigations, such as environmental preservation. What would be the most cost-effective and short-term adaptation solutions to protect the local communities and mitigate the impact of sea level rise due to rapid impact of climate change on coastal communities?
That's a terrific question. I'm happy to take a stab at it. I think my answer is going to be unsatisfactory, though, in that it's really site specific in a lot of ways. And, you know, I don't think there's a silver bullet short-term solution. I think people, you know, we're working with community members who live here. This is their home. And so they need to have a voice in how we think about adaptation and helping people sort of adapt. And I mean, you saw the dramatic impacts to this particular community in that virtual reality projection. And I think we need to figure out how to make people whole and ease them through the transition here, because it's going to be hard for a lot of people. And I think, you know, there's a lot of conversations about managed retreat and getting out away from the coast. And that is often sort of looked at as the silver bullet answer of getting people out of harm's way. And yet, these are real people. And the minute you walk into a community, it's very easy to remove yourself from that and look at it on a map and think that that's a great solution. But it's not going to happen overnight. And that's not, people are not interested in those solutions right now either. In a lot of places, especially where nuisance flooding that we talked about before has been something that has always been a part of the landscape. So I think having real community input, you know, we just brought on an environmental anthropologist to help us actually understand more about what communities want here and tailor the adaptation approaches sort of in a stepwise fashion. And we think about adaptation more based on trigger points that the community has helped design and are comfortable with, that also, you know, have to take in these flood risk reduction. Obviously, we don't want to keep spending lots of money and allowing people to be in places that put them at risk, but there's got to be some sort of community input and compromises there. So I don't know if that's a helpful answer for you, but I appreciate the question a lot. We could talk about it all day.
All right, if no one else is going to jump in, give it another 20 seconds. Okay, there's a quick poll for the remaining members that are here. If you could go, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen where the triangle, square, and circle are, click on that and then click on polls. And it's just for seeing if anybody would be interested in receiving credit for attending the seminar. So if you say, oh, Jaleesa, if you could start the poll. Oh, there you go. And I'll give it about a minute or so just for everybody to click on that. Okay, while people are going through, I'll just finish up the rest of their presentation, just close it out. So for the timeline moving forward for the FMA and BRIC, by August of this year, notice of interest will be due to MEMA. And in September, the 2021 NOFO will be available. By October of 2021, the FEMA Go sub-applications will also be available, and sub-applications are due to MEMA in November, with the state application due in between January and February of next year. So moving forward for next steps, this is MEMA's new notice of interest. There is a link in this presentation, which I could send out. There's also, it's posted on the MEMA website. Like I said, again, the deadline for that is August 31st. You must register for FEMA Go in order to manage any of the grants. So if you haven't already, the link is here as well, and you need your DUNS number to register. The mitigation action portfolio consists of just a collection of grant projects that have been completed, and it contains the cost, the scope, the funding, everything that you could think of listed by hazard in there. So if you were looking for a little inspiration or ideas, or just see what else has been done inside of the United States, it is available at the FEMA website. I can send the link to you as well, or the link is in the PowerPoint. And with that, if there are any questions for the mitigation branch, they can be sent to mitigation.mema@maryland.gov. And with that, I'll close it out and say thank you for everybody attending, and for Bo and Nicole and Kelly for coming together and putting together presentations. And hopefully this drives some inspiration and innovation in BRIC. So if there's anything else, any other questions? If not, I will just go ahead and wrap it up.
Thanks, Nevin. This was great. I'm happy to provide any more feedback to anybody who's interested in that technology.
Sure, absolutely. And I believe your information might have already been put in the chat, but yeah, if there is.
I didn't see it.
Let's see here.
I see it. Thank you.
Right, and like Jaleesa just said, we'll also send out follow-up materials to everybody. So, all right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. So thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you. It was a great meeting. Thank you.